Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. A really fun video for today talking about not only Kevin Durant yet again on the channel, but also DeAndre Ayton and his restricted free agency, because it is a very unique situation that we are currently taking a look at. You know, we don't have situations like this pop up very often where a top 5 player in the world becomes available and then one of the better young players in the league who just averaged 17 and 11 and was a former #1 overall pick becomes somewhat available on the free agent market. And interestingly enough, these two players have a lot to do with each other right now. And as you can see from the title and the opening graphic here, DeAndre Ayton controls Kevin Durant's future, sort of. We'll talk about that in today's video. What do I exactly mean by that? If you guys are new to Utility Sports, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe to the channel for more. And if you ever want to see a specific video, go ahead and request it to us on Twitter. Here we have Jake Garcia, someone who's been watching the channel for a while. He messaged me on Twitter via DM and said, "Love what you guys been doing. Would you want to make a video here on Ayton, potentially to Indiana?" And I've kind of expanded that a little bit, but we will talk specifically about that as well, Jake, if you are watching this video, which I'm expecting you are. So if you guys do have anything you want to see yourself, go ahead and request it. That's one of the unique things here at Utility Sports. That's why the initials here are us, because it's an us platform. You guys contribute just as much as I do. So let me know what you'd like to see on the channel moving forward. So for the video preview, I'm going to talk about the overlap between Ayton and Kevin Durant, the Phoenix Suns perspective on the situation, potential sign and trades to watch for centered around DeAndre Ayton landing in a variety of different cities. Then also other DeAndre Ayton landing spots that are not required for a sign and trade, which is going to be a lot of fun to talk about. So let's jump right into it here. Ayton and KD, how are these two players connected? Well, DeAndre Ayton is a restricted free agent, and you guys need to repeat with me, restricted free agent, and I want to put an emphasis on free agent. I don't care what you throw in a trade machine. Ultimately, DeAndre Ayton gets to choose where he's going to play next year, or he'll be playing in Phoenix. There are really only two options there. You cannot force him to sign a contract with any team you want him to, especially Phoenix. Can't just say, oh, we'll sign and trade you to Brooklyn, or we'll sign and trade you here, there, or anywhere else. You can't force Ayton to play in a specific city other than Phoenix if you're the Suns, because you do have matching rights on him because of their restricted status. Doesn't mean you can just send him wherever you want. And then KD's preferred landing spot is Phoenix. So this is where we get into a very unique situation where if KD wants to land in Phoenix, it probably takes DeAndre Ayton going out the door. But the issue here for Phoenix is it's not just that easy, which we're going to look at their perspective right now. Obviously, what the Suns would probably like to do, and I think a lot of people are really looking at and saying, well, this is the obvious thing. Sign and trade Ayton to the Nets, add draft picks and Mikal Bridges to make the money work, and focus on winning a title right now. And that sounds all fine and dandy. That sounds like a perfect move to make. Oh, let's give up Ayton, Bridges, two really good young players that the Nets I'm sure would like to have if they could add them, and then a collection of draft picks. You know, you're talking 4 unprotected firsts, 3 pick swaps in there, the whole kit and caboodle, right, for Kevin Durant. But there's a lot of holdups here. Again, Ayton is a free agent. Even though he's restricted, he can sign where he would want to sign, at least on an offer sheet, and then Phoenix has the capabilities of matching that. Phoenix can't just tell Ayton, hey, we want you to play in Brooklyn, so that's where you're going to play. That's not how restricted free agency works at all. DeAndre Ayton cannot be forced to play in Brooklyn if he doesn't want to. He can't be forced to play anywhere. Ultimately, if he wants to, he could be as patient as he wants, and that's kind of what we're seeing right now, where Ayton's maybe not getting the money he would like to from Phoenix or from another team, and it's kind of putting a hold up on all of this, especially while Phoenix probably not super in a hurry to make a deal work here with Ayton, because they're trying to keep their flexibility open to see if a Kevin Durant trade is possible. So it's no surprise that Ayton, at the time I'm recording this at least, is still a free agent. So when you look at it and you say, okay, well, what other holdups are there? Not only is it Ayton wanting to play in Brooklyn or whatever other city, you also need the Nets to want your offer. And is Ayton and Bridges and picks the best offer out there? You could argue that OG Anunoby and Gary Trent Jr., both of those guys averaged 18 plus points a game this past year, is a better offer with draft picks than Ayton and Bridges, which I know some people would disagree with. And I think it's at least close and comparable. Say Toronto wanted to add in a Precious Achiuwa or something, then we're talking about a probably better package here. Maybe the Suns have to throw in Cam Johnson. And that's where you get into some of the details here that Brooklyn and their GM Sean Marks is going to have to be going through and saying, what are we going to get for Kevin Durant? And also, does Brooklyn even want to trade Kevin Durant right now? He's got 4 years under contract. Just because he wants out Doesn't mean he can't just not play. They could fine him all of his money and not pay him if that's what KD wants to do. I'm sure Brooklyn would be like, okay, fine, we'll just keep you for your contract. It's not like you're going to lose value. Everyone knows who Kevin Durant is. They know how good of a player he is. Brooklyn's going to be methodical in this process as well. So, yes, I'm sure the Suns would love to get something done immediately, but it's not that simple. So, let's look at some potential sign-in trades here. First of all, the one straight up between Phoenix and Brooklyn is the one that I think a lot of people are going to look at. You see the trade for Ayton going to the Brooklyn Nets, along with Mikal Bridges, maybe Cam Johnson, and all those draft picks like we talked about, and Kevin Durant to the Suns. Now, it's not super easy to facilitate that. You need Ayton to want to play there, and again, that's complicated. Then you look at the Utah Jazz. Maybe Ayton wants to go play in Utah, especially now that Gobert is out of town. So what could we see? Maybe we see Ayton go to Utah, a couple of those draft picks coming from Minnesota, and a couple from Utah going back out the door to Brooklyn to really incentivize the pot, because maybe Brooklyn doesn't even want DeAndre Ayton, which is a real possibility as well. And if Brooklyn doesn't want Ayton, then you're going to have to throw in other picks, because if you're in Brooklyn's shoes, do you really want to give a max contract to DeAndre Ayton when you're trading out Kevin Durant? You're giving up one of the 5 best players in the world, and you also have to overpay DeAndre Ayton. Does that sound like a great situation for you? To me, it really doesn't. I would be out on Ayton as well if that's the price point that we're looking at to get a deal done. I'm just not really interested in that if I'm Brooklyn. So maybe I get those extra draft picks here and draft assets from Utah, send Ayton to Utah, and we also send Kevin Durant back to Phoenix. And then, we get the Mikal Bridges. We get maybe a few role players to stay competitive, but really the draft equity is really the focus there. For Charlotte, I'm less likely to see this one happen, just given the fact they drafted Mark Williams. They were really tied to DeAndre Ayton before the draft, but with the Mark Williams selection at 15, I feel like it's really cooled down here now for Charlotte. You look at the situation here where Phoenix, again, would get KD, probably see Ayton go to Charlotte, and then a collection of draft picks come from Charlotte and from Phoenix out to Brooklyn. Again, I don't see this one as likely, though. Then we look at a 3-team deal between Phoenix, Brooklyn, and Toronto, which, again, this is an interesting one. I'm not sure if Toronto's really in the appetite to help Phoenix land Kevin Durant. But let's say, Toronto's looking at it and say, well, maybe this is a really good way for us to land DeAndre Ayton at a reduced price. So there, maybe you say, okay, Brooklyn really liked Gary Trent or OG Anunoby, who there's been rumors he wants out of Toronto. Now, I'm not sure if that's really true or not. I'm not going to buy way too much into that, but it's possible. So from Brooklyn's perspective, they say, okay, maybe instead of you guys getting Kevin Durant, we get Anunoby, you guys get DeAndre Ayton, and maybe we'll let you keep a pick or we get a pick. They'll figure out some of the second rounders, some stuff in the sign and trade that is not worth talking about in full detail in this video, but ultimately could, play a little bit of a factor into the discussions. And then you look at a final 3-team deal here between Phoenix, Brooklyn, and Atlanta. And then the idea here for Atlanta to hop in is to, again, get a crack at DeAndre Ayton. So these 4 teams on the bottom there, the Jazz, Hornets, Raptors, Hawks, could be teams interested in Ayton in a sign and trade, assuming that Brooklyn is not really interested in acquiring him, which I think is a possibility that could make some sense. And you could see other teams jump in. Maybe a team really wants Mikal Bridges. Maybe a team really wants Cam Johnson. They really pay a lot of draft picks to do so. For example, if you're a fan of a team that needs a wing defender, giving up 2 first-round picks if you're a solid team to get Mikal Bridges, I would advise to do that. Mikal Bridges, I really like him as a young player, and I think if your team could hop in to get him from Brooklyn here, essentially in a 3-team deal, I would recommend it highly. So these 4 teams, I think, could all be in play. We'd see Capella get relocated in this. There would be a lot of moving parts. That's kind of the point. We could see this get expanded out to 4, maybe even 5 teams. And who knows, if it gets crazy enough, 7, 8 teams could get involved. But I think it's going to be one of the bigger trades in NBA history if and when it ultimately does go down. But there's a reason I said if. There are teams that could hop in here and completely ruin the day, which is probably the biggest point of the video here. These 2 teams, the Indiana Pacers and San Antonio Spurs, have legitimate cap space right now. After some of their moves where the Pacers offloaded Brogdon and the Spurs offloaded DeJounte Murray, they both find themselves in positions where they could flat out just give DeAndre Ayton a contract. And let's say, as a restricted free agent, maybe Phoenix is not willing to let him go for nothing. Now, these teams do not have to facilitate a sign and trade at all with Phoenix to land Ayton, which is where this gets really interesting. Phoenix could decide, yes, we're not going to let Ayton go. He was our former #1 overall pick. We're going to match whatever offer sheet. It could be a max, it could be a little bit less than the max, it could be 4 years, $80 million, 4 years, $90 million, whatever the number is, right? Phoenix could say, we're going to match. He's a former #1 overall pick. We're not going to let him walk for nothing. He's young and he's good with our team. We know that. We made the finals with him as our starting center. But Indiana here and San Antonio have enough pressure to really leverage Phoenix into making a decision. And let's say they do match that offer sheet. Well, the closest date that they could then trade DeAndre Ayton would become December 15th of 2022, which means you put Phoenix in a really tight spot here for the next 5 months. They're not even able to execute a trade with the Brooklyn Nets, which maybe would open the door for other possibilities for other teams looking to land Kevin Durant. That's where the Toronto Raptors could jump in, or maybe even the Miami Heat, who we've talked about a little bit on this channel. I have other KD trades on the video that I think are really worth looking into. These two teams here in San Antonio and Indiana could really handcuff Phoenix and put them in a tough spot. And let's say Phoenix says, okay, instead of wanting to lock ourselves in on a really expensive Ayton contract, we just let him go. You lose all leverage in any trade for Kevin Durant. You can't let a former #1 overall pick who's young and productive just leave for nothing and expect to still have a shot at landing KD. I'm telling you right now, the Nets are not going to say, oh, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and cap filler plus picks for Kevin Durant. They're not going to look at that super fondly. That's where you get into a really tough situation if you're Phoenix, where all of your plans to build up a young core and then maybe make this big trade for a Kevin Durant type, put him next to CP and Book, it could all fall apart. If Indiana or San Antonio wanted to go out and spend some of that money in cap space that they have, now will either of these teams do that? I'm not sure. San Antonio looks like they're interested in losing this year to potentially land Victor Wembanyama in the draft, or maybe even Scoot Henderson from G League Ignite. And Indiana, I could see them pulling the trigger. Now they do have Miles Turner, and some would say, well, would there be a sign and trade for Miles Turner? They don't need to. They have cap space. Why would they give up a piece for nothing in that deal? What they would do is if they sign Ayton, they could look for other Miles Turner trades, trade him for a first or a couple future firsts, whatever it ends up being. Indiana doesn't need to sacrifice Miles Turner for nothing either. So Phoenix could be in a really tough bind here because of these two teams. And also, this could really hurt Brooklyn's market for Kevin Durant, because the moment Ayton signs somewhere else and the Suns don't have the willingness to trade anymore because they don't have the assets, every other team in the league will know that. If they're trying to bid for Kevin Durant, the Raptors will say, well, the Suns kind of out of it now after losing Ayton for nothing. Or, oh, I have until December 15th to really send a great offer because I know the Suns can't right now trade Ayton anyway. So it gives a little bit of patience to other teams. It also really hurts Brooklyn's leverage, and it also really hurts Phoenix's chances at landing Kevin Durant. I really think the Pacers and Spurs could play upset here, and I'm kind of hoping to see it happen because it's a really fun, unique situation that we rarely ever see in the NBA. And if these two teams could get involved in, maybe making life difficult on Phoenix, a team that's really good in the West, it would be a lot of fun to watch. Plus, Ayton's just a really good young player in his own right. And for these two teams who typically don't land a lot of free agents, could be a really nice signing for them as well. Hopefully you guys did enjoy today's video. I know it's a really fun one looking at a very niche situation in the NBA, but I'm really excited to see how it unfolds. Let me know in the comment section how you think everything plays out. Where will DeAndre Ayton play basketball next year? Will it be with one of those 4 teams I mentioned in the sign-in trades? Will it be with Indiana or San Antonio, back in Phoenix, or will he be in Brooklyn? Who knows? It seems like a third of the league right now could potentially have Ayton on their roster going into next season. And who knows about Kevin Durant? We'll keep our eyes monitored on that as well. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks again, guys, so much for watching. Go follow us on Twitter, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.